What's in Monique's bag? It's time. We're gonna do the 2020 camera gear video right now. First though, let's set up lights. That's better. Now we've got some light to see all the gear that's in my bag. All right. If you saw my video last year of my 2019 photography gear, it included Nikon, Sony, Canon. I was in the process of switching over to Sony this time last year. And you probably saw my other video about why I switched to Sony. I had Nikon, my partner has Canon. Why we're doing that, that's in a previous video. But obviously, it is time to take a look inside my camera bag now for 2020. As a pet photographer, what do I prefer to carry around? Now, keep in mind, this is obviously just what I like to use at my studio for my style of pet photography. Your style may differ, and a lot of these you could use any brand for, but I'm really loving Sony. So let's take a look. Now this video is only going to cover camera gear specifically. My next video will be my studio lighting gear also that I say studio just because I'm Silver Paw Studio, but it is on location and actually inside. So that'll be my next video, an in-depth look at my lighting that I use. If you don't know me, my name is Monique Renee. I own Silver Paw Studio, pet and people photography. I want to give you a tour of my camera bag. It is time. All right, are you ready? Okay, let's take a look. This camera bag is nothing special. I got it, I don't know, at a local camera store. It's called ProMaster. It's pretty comfy, but it's small-ish, I think. It's got the, just regular stuff on here. So nothing special about the camera bag that I use. I kind of like it cheaper because I take it all kinds of places and want to be able to wash it off. All right, so I've got my spider holster in here, and if you've seen me in previous videos, I have an attachment at the bottom of my cameras, and so does my partner, and so we can carry our cameras around our waist and be hands-free. So in my bag, you'll notice that I have, you probably already know this, let me just take both of these things out. Whoa. Okay. So I've been shooting the last year with the Sony A7R III. And like I said, I did a previous video about why I migrated over to this camera. But one of the things I may not have mentioned very much is the 42 megapixel count on megapixel. The 42 megapixels on the A7R III. Now, I know that seems like overkill. I know you're thinking, oh my gosh, how many hard drives am I gonna have to buy? What's the buffering? Why in the world would you buy a camera with 42 megapixels? Heck, 10 years ago, we were using 12 and we were just fine. Sound familiar? Well, here's what I have found. Animals are sporadic. They do what they want to do, and when I'm out on location, there could be 3 dogs at once on a leash, one over here sniffing for bunnies, one over here next to their people, and one just laying in the grass. They're all over the place. And so what I love to be able to do is take those 42 megapixels, and when I get back to my computer, if I only have a few of one dog, I can look at the group photos that I'm not using and pick out one image of that other dog. So for example, last spring, I photographed 3 dogs at a park, and it was just me and their person. So we could have used an extra handler. But what happens in those sporadic times is that, okay, I've got my group image of all 3, and I've made sure I got individuals of each dog, but one dog I might only have maybe 8 pictures I want to show, and the other ones I have 2. So what I do is I go back through the group images and see if there's a couple pictures that I can crop in on that particular dog. So I love the possibilities of the 42 pixels for that. And then the other is sometimes dogs, especially don't want to be super close to me. And so I can back way up and still crop in and have a decent photo. That's not ideal, of course. Those images where you need some space, it's nice to have those extra megapixels. So that's a couple reasons why I got 42 megapixels specifically. So this is the main camera I've been using for the last year. And so I know the most about this one, but you've probably noticed, we're gonna talk about the lenses in a second. You've probably noticed this beast sitting next to me. Now, we're not gonna talk about this, what I call ridiculous bird lens. This is the 200 to 600 millimeter lens that Steve needs for his bird and wildlife photography. I do have a short silly video I did of trying to photograph shelter dogs using this camera, and it's a bit much. So I'm going to tell you that right off the bat, a little bit much. What I want to show you, this is the Sony A9ii. Now, we haven't had this very long in the last couple of months, and some of that was over the holidays, so I really haven't had a chance to totally put this through its paces yet. But here's the main reasons why we added the Sony A9ii to the studio. Number one is going to be Steve's primary camera. He does a lot of wildlife, birds, outdoor. So there's that, but he knows that I need it for my pet photography clients as well. So we made sure we found a camera that fit the specs for both of those. What's the big selling point of the A9ii is the action focus. There's been a lot of rumors that this is the camera that the Olympics photographers are going to use. All those super fast athletes, this will be the go-to camera is what all the rumors are. And so I am doing a comparison video of using the Sony A9ii and the Sony A7R III, both with the same settings and this 70-200 lens. And I'll be showing you my comparison with action images. But that is one of the main reasons I got this camera, as also to have a second body. So Sony A9ii added to our little camera bag about 2 months ago, and so far so good. So those are the two cameras and why I've added them to my pet photography repertoire. So a lot of action images with this and pretty much everything else with this, and also having a second body, and both of them are excellent at video for all of my client work and of course right here on YouTube. Obviously today we're using the GoPro. Now, as far as lenses, this ridiculous bird lens aside, again, unless you are out there photographing animals in a big arena or far away, this would be probably really great. I can handhold with this if you can get a high enough shutter speed. So pretty cool. I'm hoping to do a more in-depth review on this lens at some point very soon. Okay, so the 70-200, I think I talked about this in a previous video, but why is this my go-to? This is my main lens. This stays on my camera almost all the time. I love it. The 70-200, of course, is really good for the animals that are farther away, and it is nice and fast. It's a 2.8 G Master lens. Let me take this lens hood off. You can see it a little bit better. There are programmable buttons on it, Steadicam. I can use this with no tripod all day long, and it is amazing. So really love the 70-200. One of the considerations when you're thinking about which lens to add to your camera bag for your studio is what look you want to go for. So what mood are you trying to convey with your pet photography, especially with pet and people photography? So with this lens, I can get in closer for those intimate moments where I don't have to be in their face necessarily, but if a dog and its person are kind of snuggling or interacting, I can still be a fair distance away and capture those moments without feeling like I'm right there next to them. So nice intimate moments with this. The other one, of course, is what everyone talks about with the compression. If I'm at the more zoomed in, say at 200 millimeters and I'm far back, I can have foreground, middle ground with my subjects, and background all feel like they're whoosh, scooched right together. For instance, with this particular image, we had the dogs laying in the grass and the foothills in the background. And so the foothills just felt like they're right here behind the dogs and the grass right here. A nice setting. It's more like what we remember it in our eyes. So when I went out to that property, I saw that right away. To me, those mountains looked big and the dogs would look so stately in front of it. But I needed to use a longer lens to compress those all together to get that look. Like you want that background nice and close and have it really fill behind your subjects. So a couple of reasons why I just love my 70-200. And 70 honestly is wide enough for a lot of what I do without distortion also. I actually have some dirt on this. The other lens I added to the bag recently was this wide angle Tamron. Oh, and I should go back and say, you know, why do I have a Tamron or why do I have a Sony? Well, at the time, so there was only the Sony brand 70-200 2.8 lens. I didn't have any other choices. If I wanted the 70-200 to work with the Sony, it was the Sony G Master. I'm not sure if that's still the case. And then when I went to look for a wide angle lens, there was a couple. So Sony has the, I believe, 18-35 2.8 G Master that goes along with this one. And I've heard great reviews about that, but the cost was probably 3 times greater than this Tamron. So that's part of the reason I went with the Tamron. And why do I need a wide angle lens? I just told you how much I love the effect that the 70-200 has. Well, same idea. I love the effect that a wide angle will have. This is especially great, number one, if you're in a small space. Sometimes all you have is a little tiny space to work in, and this lens is just too big. You have to have way more room to back up just in order to focus. So having this lens enables me to be much, much closer, still have that 2.8, which doesn't account for as much on a wide angle lens. You're really not going to blur the background, but it's nice to let in that extra light. And then the 28, when you're at the 28 millimeters, you still get a fairly normal, like no distortion. So I love this for those, what I call bobblehead images. And this is a really popular look right now. I don't do it very much. They have a speed light and a beautiful sunset or cityscape behind this dog, and the dog's face is huge in the lens. They can do that with a wide angle lens because they can be fairly close and get that really distorted large head look. This is the kind of lens you're going to want for that. Be cognizant of the distortion. So in that kind of image, you probably want the distortion, or the kind of images where the cat's paw is coming right at you or the dog's nose you want really big. So those kinds aren't great on this, but if you're doing something like I was at a vet practice photographing their team the other day, and we were in a really small room, and so I had to be very careful which millimeter I was at so I didn't make one person look huge even though they're only 1 foot away. So be careful of distortion on these kind of lenses, but these are great. If you do any kind of interior photography of, like, say, real estate, another reason I got this, I don't do very much of that, but every once in a while, like sometimes the shelters need a few good images for their website or their brochures of their spaces. So it's nice to have a wide angle lens for those features too. So there you go. Those are the 2 lenses I have for SilverPod Studio. You'll notice if you watched my 2019 video, I had my nifty 50 millimeter lens, and I still stand by my statement then that if you are starting out and you have a DSLR, get a 50 millimeter 1.8 lens and you are really good to go. I don't have one now because I feel like between these 2 lenses, I just would never use it, but you never know. 50 millimeter is still a fantastic lens for whatever type of portrait photography you're doing. So still highly recommend that lens. What do I want to add to my bag next year would probably be the 24-70, the lens that's not sitting right here in between these 2. Again, because of tight spaces like that vet office that I was telling you about, the 24-70 would have been great in that situation, or the times where this is just a little too wide and this is a little too long, but I want that bokeh to be better. That 24-70 is going to be in my bag probably next year. As far as camera gear, gosh, that's really the basics. So that is my still portrait photography gear that I use here in Silver Paw Studio. This does not include any video gear that I have. I have quite the assortment of video gear as well that I use for commercial clients, for whatever I do for the shelters, and for here on YouTube. For instance, right now I'm using the GoPro 7 Black. It has the Rode Video Mic Pro. I have some studio lights, all kinds of different things. So if you want a video about the equipment I use for YouTube and commercial video making, let me know and I will make a video about that maybe this spring. So if that's something you want to see, type it in the comments and I'll make that happen for you. Oh my goodness, so that is the tour of what camera gear that I'm using in my pet photography studio for 2020. What do you think? What would you do differently? Or what's your style? I do have more gear videos coming up. Remember, my next video will be about the lights that I use in studio and on location. So I'm pretty excited to make that video because I do get quite a bit of comments and questions about the lights that I use too. So that's an upcoming video. And if you like this kind of content, be sure to paw that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. And I'm so glad you're here and thanks for watching this video. As always, I wish you many woofs, purrs, and TREATSs. Super great on location outside. I do take this with me on photo shoots outside. I like to add that little bit of extra light into their eyes. If it's I can also do that with my speed light though. So it just adds, if I have a lot of backlight to them or a lot of pretty color, but I need light in their face,